Hey there, vinyl community in the rest of the world and the rest of the record collecting world. It's Mazzy here. And this is a second part or an extension of a video that I did. I have Michael here from 33 RPM Audiophile, who's in Dusseldorf, Germany.
45.
35 RPM?
45.
45. Oh, I forgot to change my changer. Anyway, I always get it wrong. Anyway, there'll be a link below to Michael's channel. We did a video a few weeks ago about audiophile records, and we really concentrated on mostly jazz in that area. And I thought it'd be a good idea to do one on rock and roll audiophile analog reissues. I did not pull any records that are brand new records or that were new to this format. All of mine are records that have been out for years. I mean, I think the emphasis is classic rock, although there are some other areas and a few things that do cross over from rock and roll. It's not pure rock and roll. There might be some folk stylings and maybe country rock and a few other things that I'm going to show. What I like about Michael's videos, and what you should watch them, because he's one of the few people I've seen in the vinyl community on YouTube that talks pretty much exclusively about audiophile pressings. Everything from Mobile Fidelity to Music Matters Jazz to Tone Poets to Sam Records and on and on and on. And he talks a little bit about the music, but really it's about the issues, the specific issues, the pressings. Are they worth it? Why they cost what they do, the availability, limited editions, and on. And, you know, this whole subject goes either way. People have different strong opinions on this. Some people think it's an expensive and overpriced way to buy music, and it's too expensive to buy one record that may be $40 or $50 or $150. And we'll discuss that a little bit, and we're both going to go back and forth and show it. So I'm going to introduce Michael now. Michael's in Dusseldorf, and this is extension on that, but for the rock audience. And hopefully you'll see, maybe we'll turn you on to some music and some pressings. So Michael's going to start off with a little sort of an addendum, a bridge from our last video to this video. So nice to see you again, Michael.
Thanks for having me again. And I owe your community this one from the last video. If somebody doesn't know why I'm showing this one, maybe if you're interested, go to our first collaboration. I think it's around minute 14 to 15. And there you will see why I'm showing this one. This is it. I was downstairs.
That's the record. I think that was in the vault.
It was there, yes.
That's a whole other story. Yeah, watch that first video and watch this video. Click subscribe, click like, go to Michael's and subscribe. Okay, so Michael is the visiting team, and so he's going to start, and we're just going to have a conversation on these records, showcase them, and talk a little bit about the labels, because there are several labels, the good, bad, and the ugly of audiophile reissues, analog pressings.
Yeah, okay, if I may start, I would like to start with a label that doesn't exist anymore, but has some gorgeous pressings, some of the very, very big ones. And audiophile, very hard to find, audiophile versions of The Who. I have here the Tommy, and who's next? And those are, in my opinion, the best sounding editions of those records. They aren't out there anymore, but they are not that hard to get as you may think. So this is a good chance to get into The Who on an audiophile basis, because no other label, no MoFis, no analog productions, nobody ever put them out again. And I think that's a quite interesting start into our collaboration video, because that's rock and roll pure.
What label is this again?
Classic Recordings. The same goes for this one, and those are my three Who's. Probably you know The Who live at Leeds.
Great
In my
sounds of drumming. Keith Moon's drums on that. I don't have that pressing, but the drums are amazing on that.
and in my opinion, this is one of the best recorded live concerts ever.
That's what,
it's
68,
gorgeous.
69s, I think, yeah.
Have you been there? You have been to so many concerts. Have you
No,
been there?
I saw them in 16. That's live at Leeds. I think that's 69. Someone else is going to remind me. I did not. I've never been to Leeds, but I did see the first time I ever saw The Who was in early 69 at the Fillmore West when they performed Tommy. It was right after Tommy came out. But since you mentioned that album, the only classic record I have, and I grabbed that now just because it's a nice natural progression. I didn't organize my records by label. It's just going to be all over the place. But my only classic record is Led Zeppelin 2. And I do not have the box set of that. Yeah. Now, it's in my case, I would love that first album. That is my all-time favorite Led Zeppelin record. To me, it was really different, beautifully recorded. I know Led Zeppelin 2 and Led Zeppelin 4 are people's favorite for the most part. There's something about the first album that I love, but this is the classic pressing. And I only found this like 3 or 4 years ago at a record show in Seattle. And I have the box set, but Led Zeppelin is a band that I had all originals, American pressings. And in the my 90s purge, 1995 purge of a quarter of my or a third of my record collection because of CDs, I sold all my Zeppelin albums thinking, oh, I'll just get them better on compact disc. So I don't have any originals anymore, but I was in a record and I saw this and they were asking $50 for it. And I didn't really realize it was a classic record. And I told the guy, we could pay 30. I got it for $40. And, and then I brought it home and I realized it was a classic. I put it on, and especially Whole Lotta Love, that guitar break, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Amazing recording. These records go for hundreds of dollars now, I think. Michael, you could probably talk about the price.
They are quite expensive, but I think Bernie Grundman was the guy who did the mastering on the classic recordings, and I've never heard of Bob Ludwig. I never heard it, but these are, if you want to go in Led Zeppelin and have a good pressing, those are the ones to go, and they are. It's a decent price for. This is one of the biggest bands ever, and those are one of the most important records ever. And it's a shame that there are no newer audiophile recordings, but I think that story will never happen.
Now Robert Plant is very protective of those things, and I actually have the box sets that came out with the extra LP and things. I know they're digitally sourced. They actually sound really well, and I did do at the time a shootout. The classic definitely has the edge, but those are not shabby, and I could totally be happy with those. And the danger of this kind of stuff is, we talked a little bit about it in the last video about depending on your system, you don't need a high-end over-the-top system, but your system is going to make a difference on your cartridge, your turntable, your amplification, your speakers. It all, you can get into the down and dirty about cabling and that, but also it's up to you, your ears, your room, the way you feel, and I can certainly enjoy rock and roll I'm down in my office here where I have these old JBL 100 speakers from the 70s. Audiophile, I hate these friggin' speakers because they're rock and roll boomy. I had a pair I spent $600 on in 1975. My girlfriend thought I was crazy spending that much money in 1975, and I love those speakers. And I blast them down here. I mostly play compact discs down here, but I have a Dual German turntable that I got in the 80s, and it's not a fancy thing, but it sounds great down here. And I could be totally satisfied with any of these records, even the digital versions and everything. So that's a whole can of worms, and you can go down the rabbit hole talking about this stuff. And we're going down the rabbit hole in this video.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. But on the other hand, I think one of the reasons for the vinyl boom is the quality vinyl can give to you, and so there may be people like me or excuse me, or other people who want to go for the limit and who wants to go what's in it, how far can I go with a Led Zeppelin, how good can it sound, and it's another kind of hobby maybe.
Yeah.
But vinyl is something special, and the audiophile recordings, in my opinion, drives you to the edge of what vinyl and hi-fi equipment can provide or can give you.
And there's usually some more care, taken care of in the pressings, the pressing plans, the mastering, obviously, and the cover and cover art. And we've talked about that with the Music Matters Jazz, how the printing heavier covers, original negatives, and whenever possible of the photography, tipped on jackets in some cases. So not everything. We talked about Blue Note 80s that has these kind of skimpy covers, but the pressings are top notch for the most part, close. And there's a couple rock and roll things here that I'll show that aren't the over the top high end things. So why don't you go on? Your turn.
Yeah, for the not so hot pressings, take this one, Inagada la Vida, but it has never been a good recording. They have to live with what they get, and but on the other hand, what they did with this edition over at MoFi is the best sounding version that you can have.
And having that 5-minute drum solo is on the long version. I love Inagata da Vida. It's kind of over the top. With that record, while you're talking about that, I'm going to show this one because it came out very close to the same time.
Yeah.
And Overkill. This one just came out on MoFi. Over the top organ, a little bit of prog psychedelic, obviously, all cover songs like Keeps Me Hanging On.
Those are not your typical audiophile records, but in both cases, I think these are the best possible editions you can have of those records.
Yeah. This is a 45 RPM. Is that 33 or 45?
It's 33 because you know how long Inagada la Vida
I didn't want to split it out.
Yeah. No, please, not one song on two sides, no.
It's funny, I mentioned this on another video because I just showcased this on a new buy video. They mention here on side 3 and side 4, there's a track called Illusions of My Childhood Part 3. It's the music they do to merge between like Keep Me Hanging On, Eleanor Rigby and all. They repeat that song on side 4 because they didn't want to break up that transition. So side 3 ends with that song and side 4 begins with it again. This is a great album. Again, we've talked about this, and a lot of people, refer to when you mentioned Robert Ludwig and that Led Zeppelin 4, the RL. In the 60s, in the early 70s, mastering engineers had to cut off the bass, the highs and the lows a little bit, clip them, so they wouldn't jump on turntables. That's the reason they redid the Led Zeppelin 4 that Robert Ludwig mastered it very hot, really punchy, and people love that now. Now with this, the records we have, it's a different thing. We talked about this with the Music Matters Jazz. They're not going to; those records do not sound like the Rudy Van Gelder cut original records. They don't. Those records sound amazing. You will hear more on these audiophile records than you heard on the version when you were a kid playing it all the time, and that's just the fact.
The audiophile, at least the jazz audiophiles, are more like the master tapes, like the original master tapes, the original records, the original pressings are quite different. I had the luck to hear a direct copy from an original master, and the audiophile versions are much closer to the master tapes than the original pressings.
What, there's so many great labels. Okay.
a man and his makeup.
I can't imagine ever buying an audiophile copy of that. I can't imagine buying a copy of that record, nonetheless an audiophile. But go ahead.
Don't ask me why I bought it, but I felt the urge, and childhood, or not childhood, but memories as a young man. We always said in Germany, a man and his makeup. And so I just bought it. It sounds okay, and honestly, it sounds great. And who did the mastering? Of course, Greek Wunderlich, and like always, he did a tremendous job.
I think I used to dress like that when I went to the Reeperbahn in Hamburg, or in Berlin, maybe,
Yeah, but limited to 3,000, maybe. Let's see what the market says in 2 years, 3 years. I don't know.
Again, I mentioned at the very beginning, a lot of records they've been doing up until recently have been the classic rock. How many times do you have to redo Supertramp, Crime of the Century, or a Dire Straits record, which I didn't pull this time, but I'm going to put two old records that very much benefited because they're really nice recordings. They're from the 50s, and analog productions. And these, Buddy Holly, and then the fabulous Crickets, the Chirping Crickets, excuse me. What's great about these, they're not over the top production, they're very minimal, and they sound fabulous. First of all, the cover, the photograph on this, the cover, the tipped on cover, it's not a tipped on cover, but it's heavy cardboard cover. These are amazing records, and they're actually good value. I think you can get these $35, $40 tops from Music Direct and those places in Salina, Kansas. But they sound they're great records to begin with, and this is sort of the nucleus of the rock and roll that I got into. Obviously Buddy Holly is very influenced John Lennon and Paul McCartney, along with the Everly Brothers. And these two records are just gorgeous, gorgeous records.
If I have to do a list of the top 10 sounding audiophile recordings, I think that Buddy Holly will be on that list. It's
right,
gorgeous recording. It's gorgeous.
And it's the roots, that's the fallacy. People think, you and I have had this discussion. I've had this discussion with you and a few other people about, I think in particular, the band. And I commented on you on the Basement tapes, thinking, the Basement tapes, they're these tapes that Garth Hudson recorded down sort of rehearsals, and they were like for publisher songs playing around. Why bother doing an audiophile version? And your answer was?
And my answer was that those are recordings or master tapes where a guy like Creek Wunderlich can show what he can do, how much those guys and their equipment and their team can get out of those recordings, and especially the Basement tapes from Bob Dylan. In my opinion, this is a gorgeous sounding record. It's in the basement, of course, and it will stay always in the basement, but it's a great basement. And you really get into that feeling, into that atmosphere during that recording.
I think what they should do is, how in movies, I'm sure it's the same in Germany, they'll have a line written on it by a critic, the best movie I've ever seen by Bruce Willis, by Norman Maslov, San Francisco Examiner. You could say by Michael, quote, but it's a great basement. I love that. It's a great basement.
Thank you.
Your next choice.
My next choice. Let's go with Steppenwolf. Born to be Wild. 45 round per minute analog. 45 or 33?
This is the 33 that came out about a year and a half ago. That one just came out in the last few weeks, right? Right.
And you like your 33?
I love it, and I don't think I'm going to push it.
If you like it, you love that.
Here's my go ahead. I'll chime in
No,
after.
no, no, no,
Well,
no, because
I
here
love this
is,
record. I love this record. I think half the songs are amazing. What I would like, I love the first two Steppenwolf albums. After the first, Steppenwolf with Pusher, and then the
yeah,
Steppenwolf the second was with 28 and a bunch of. I wish he would do those two records. Now they have great songs here and there after there's those two albums, but those to me are perfect albums for the genre. And I remember I got this and I listened to it and I love it. It sounds great. I remember reading how I forgot his name from Analog Productions.
Chet Kassim?
Yes. He's the one that pulled it together. It was a real bitch. It took him years to find all the master tapes because a lot of people don't realize when you're doing a greatest hits album, sometimes even back in the day when greatest hits albums came out, uh, you never knew where the tapes came from because they could be second generation for this cut and this cut has a different generation. It's different in the single version. It's sort of a mashup. It's not like taking the master tape of Abbey Road or Steppenwolf the first and doing it. He had to go and find in his mind or supposedly the original tape master or close to the master of every track on this album, and they'd all be in separate places theoretically. So he had a rough time. This took him a very long time. I think that's why they eventually cut it to 45 too. But great record.
They go sometimes they go so deep into their editions, it's unbelievable. You probably remember how long we have to wait for the Dire Straits, how long it took them to get them out finally. I think from announcement to the final release, it was years for the Dire Straits.
You can get so wrapped up. I go on these forums and I read these, people bitching about this and they didn't include that. And if people only realized not only the mastering it takes, but the business and legal licensing, and there's so much, and now that all these labels are under Universal Group or under Sony or under Warner Brothers, just to find out who has the rights and all the layers of people and who has the master tapes if they're available, it's overwhelming to me.
Yeah, that's interesting what you say, because there is a rumor. Let's go back to the beginning of our recording. That there is a rumor that the Led Zeppelin original master tapes are still with classic recordings because they are not interested in the masters anymore because they had digitalized them. So there is a rumor that the master tapes are still with classic recordings.
Wasn't Classic bought by Analog Productions or Mobi or someone? No.
By Analog Productions, yes.
Yeah. Analog.
They bought it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to share this because Michael's going to mention a record that is in the mail. It's on the way to him. And that's the classic album, Love Forever Changes. Now, you could go, I mentioned this before, I did not get into this album to about 15 to 20 years ago. I missed it the first time around, but I absolutely love it. This is this was cut by mastering engineer Chris Bellman. This is on Rhino. It's actually a really nice pressing that came out on Rhino around 2015, I'm thinking. Anyway, it doesn't matter, like in the last 5 years. This is the 45 RPM Mobile Fidelity recording, which is, if you have this, and if you have an original, it'll sound great. This, in theory, and in fact, sounds better. Again, it has more balls. It's not bass heavy, but it is fuller. Again, system dependent, how your ears hear, the highs, the lows, the mid ranges. It's a gorgeous sounding record. It is 45 RPM, so there are people that just will not go there because they got to flip the sides faster. But as you get older like me, you need that exercise to get up. The back and forth between your glass of wine and martini, you got to keep flipping that record. But Michael's going to talk about yet another over-the-top cash grab, expensive edition? And explain that, Michael.
Yeah, I hoped that I get it for this video today, but it's in the mail in Düsseldorf. On Saturday, you don't get your packages with UPS. I had hoped that I could show the laugh the laugh recording from Electric Recording Company, but I can't. It's probably a gorgeous edition, and it's a mono cut. And
isn't it a fold down though? Isn't it a fold down?
That's the big question. I ask you if because you said you have very early pressing. If it's a mono,
I do not have an early pressing. I don't.
Okay. Then I misunderstood it and looked on Discogs. There are mono pressings, but this one is probably a fold down mono. But
explain to the viewers who the electric that label is. They're out of Paris, right? No, they're out of London.
Oh, in London. It's a British label. They put out very limited editions, sometimes 150 copies of mostly 300 copies, but still very, very low. And they are, as Messi says, over the top expensive. They cost around 300 British pounds, which are around 400, which are around $400. But the market says yes. Those editions usually are out of
sell out like that, don't they?
15 to 20 minutes, they are gone.
And then a couple of them turn up for 2 or 3 times the price on Discogs.
Up to in the meantime, up to 4,000 euros. It's
cash grab. What a shit show.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it is. But the recordings are a dream, but important. With the Electric Recording Company recordings, the equipment becomes more important because they have their star is this Valve mastering system, and in my opinion, if you want to get into it and want to appreciate it, you need a vacuum tube system, because then you have the whole chain, and then it's a dream.
And nobody else in rock and roll. I know his stuff is not usually rock and roll. It's a lot of jazz and classical. Yeah. But no one else does it like that. Does Sam do that tube thing? No. And none of the obviously Hoffman or
I told it in the first video.
None of those people do that.
But I can go a little bit into this. They bought a 50-year-old Audiophile mastering system, put it together over years, put a lot of money in the reconstruction, got the manuals over at Russia, and it's unbelievable. And then they have their system, and I think that they do not much mastering. They just get the original master tapes. They do a lot of prestige, for example, prestige jazz or classic from Decca, and let the master tapes run through this Audiophile and do very beautiful pressings. And the outcome is overwhelming sometimes. You can't compare it to the sound of the MoFi or Analog or SAM or Speakers Corner or Impacts or Kioff or whatever. It's outstanding, but not in a way that the Dire Straits from Morphe are outstanding. It's a different thing.
Someone out there is thinking and writing. Again, I read these on all the forums. Are saying, when the fuck does it stop? When is better is good not good enough? When is better not good enough? Is best not good enough? When does it stop? I'm not going to pay $400 for a record unless it's this record I want for collecting purposes. Because at some point, with my setup and my stereo in the room, sounds good. I have a nice, solid system. I don't have like a crazy out there system. I probably have above average, maybe a little more above average. And I can tell the difference these things. But I rarely, when I showed those Love albums, I don't have a lot of records that I double dip, that I have 2 or 3 versions. Obviously, Beatles, and I have some of the Dylan Mo-Fis and things. But I don't, to really sit, have a glass of wine, have a martini, relax. We're in California, we could smoke up a little bit, and we could, listen to some music and turn on a lava lamp or something. And I just want to enjoy the music. I want to be in the moment. I don't sit and play this cut on this version, that cut, and that cut. Now, there's fun, and I get that hobby, and I get the A being back and forth, and all of a sudden this one has more bass, and this is, oh my God, I can hear the cymbal on this. And then some guy freaks out because there's like a quarter-second glitch of something they forgot on track 3 on the second disc, and heads are exploding on these forums. When you get what my point. I'm playing devil's advocate.
I get your point completely, and when I hear an electric recording company pressing, I sit there and listen and enjoy, and I don't do. Oh wait, yeah, okay. No, I listen and enjoy, and sometimes it's overwhelming beauty.
Okay.
Nothing more and nothing less. Of course, if I hear Nowhere Girl, 80s 12-inch, and remember the times, it's overwhelming too.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay. What's your next choice?
My next choice? I think we should talk a little bit about this guy, Steven Wilson, because if it comes to rock and roll, or prog rock, this guy has done a lot for audiophile things with his King Crimson, his Yes remasters, his Jethro Tull remasters.
It was Pineapple something.
His band was, give me a second.
Pineapple.
Porcupine Tree.
Porcupine. It was a P. Right, Porcupine Tree. I knew that. I just Pineapple Hole. Sorry.
And he did a lot.
Has become the great prog, mostly, and psychedelic mastering engineer who also went to a level of doing the 5.1 mixes.
Which I don't like, but he did that one. That's one. Great.
I have that box set of his pressings, and the only thing, the pressings are atrocious at the plant. I don't know. I forgot who pressed them. Is that an individual from the box?
I have the box, but this is an individual.
Okay. The box set, I had to have the label or the distributor replace 3 of my discs, and still they're not perfect. And the trouble with those is on the King Crimson albums, there are a lot of silent parts to them. So you hear there's surface noise and pops, and it's a pressing issue, not a mastering issue.
Have you cleaned maybe if you did give him a good cleaning?
Well, it's still.
I have to give them a listen, but I didn't recognize.
Well, I read some things too on the forum about that, and I'm usually very forgiving. My turntable, my cart, really, is very forgiving of a lot of things, and it really tracks really well. But since you're talking about Steven Wilson, I have 2 things that he worked on. Are these Ecstasy? He also did. These are Ecstasy is one of my very favorite bands. I was fortunate enough to see one of their few live tours when he came to San Francisco, because Andy Partridge he was afraid of touring and flying. And Steven Wilson, like those other artists, has done 4 or 5 of the XTC records on CD with 5.1. These are a combination of vinyl and CDs. English Settlement, which is a gorgeous record. These are box sets that have records and outtakes and a beautiful booklet, and remixed by Steven Wilson. Gorgeous set. These were sold directly through XTC's website. I think Burning Shed and a few other places return these.
Steven Wilson usually gets the artists involved with the is it the same here with
Yeah,
Ecstasy?
Andy Partridge was heavily involved in these. They're really great packaging, beautiful boxes. These are the only two that they did the full boxes on vinyl. They did some other like Non-Such, and I think Orange and Lemons is coming out. They did that. This is the one that was originally produced by Todd Rundgren, and really tempestuous time of them. But it was one of their most commercial. Has a song "Grass" and "Dear God." You know, their music is very Beatlesque, post-punk, very pop, and I just love XTC. And XTC is one of those bands that I'm a completist. And so, it's not. I mean, Audiophile, I think so. They are from the analog tapes. They go back, so they're amongst the best pressings. The originals sound great, all the same, but I would say these have the edge. And remixed and remastered by Stephen Wilson. So since you mentioned him, thought it was a good time to pull those out.
I think if we talk about audiophile rock and roll, you have to talk about Stephen Wilson, because he really did a lot, and also did a lot with Yes, but this is the Fragile, the Mophie One Step, and this is gorgeous too. Have you heard it? It's a brilliant master.
I have not heard. I have never heard of One Step. Explain that to the viewers.
Yeah, One Step is a special vinyl, and similar vinyl than with the Music Matters Jazz SRX. I think they call it decarbonized vinyl. It's very silent.
Sounds like voodoo economics, voodoo stuff that they're making up to make you buy it and pay.
But you have literally no noise floor. It's unbelievable. And the Mophie One Steps, they generally sounds fantastic. And this one is a killer. I love that record. It's a great record.
It's a great sounding record, and a great original of that record. I again, that's one of the records that I sold my original, back in the 90s. And in the last decade, I've gone through about 5 or 6 of those used to get one that sounds great. And that's when I have compared pressings, because I have one, and that record tended to be, that was what my college days. So people would get that and they'd have parties and they'd play it around, and they'd probably, drop their beer on the record and leave it out and snort coke on it or whatever they were doing. And they would get,
you know what they did in these times? They write their name on the cover, Mazzy.
I have a few of those that I wrote my name.
I know, you should, Maslov.
Yeah. I don't know why, but
it was a different approach. A record was a record.
See, those days, everyone bought records, so everyone had records. So if you went to someone's house, which I'd never do anymore, but I'm going to go back in time now, because you showed what's great about. I'm going to give you a plug again. Go to Michael's site or Michael's channel, because he's been doing this series on audiophile labels and various volumes. So he'll do Mobile Fidelity, volume 1, 2, 3, 4, and on. He'll do Music Matters Jazz, do the SRX series, which is a better quality vinyl in theory for Music Matters Jazz. He'll do Analog Productions and so on, Sam Records. He did show some of these, and I've showed these in different videos. And Audio Productions, again, out of Salina, Kansas, has been doing all the Beach Boy records. And I have about 6 of the titles, and not in all cases, but in some of the cases, I bought both mono and stereo. And of course, Brian Wilson is an amazing producer, an amazing artist. All the thing. It's all about mono. It's all about that. I know a lot of people I've seen, and myself included, have showed Pet Sounds, and that's the one that everyone kind of, I hate to say this, kind of creams in their jeans over. But for my bang for the buck, this is the most beautiful. I bought the stereo and the mono, and they're equally as good. I can't even say one's better than the other. It depends on the mood.
Difficult, yeah.
It's not wide stereo like Sgt. Pepper or something else. So the stereo works beautifully. But 2 songs in particular. I mean, this is one of the most beautiful sounding records I own. Surfer Girl, that starts side 1, and In My Room, that starts side 2.
It's unbelievable.
The wrecking crew on that, the harmonies on that, you feel like you're in the recording studio in the booth listening to the playback of that. The closest and so I would say, and these are from Analog Productions. You can get them from Music Direct and other sources. They are still available, I believe. Not crazy expensive. I don't know, $35 to $45, 35, 40.
I think, do you have from Surfer Girl, the stereo is also out on 45 round per minute, and the mono one is 33.
Yeah, I have 33 of both.
Okay, so. The 45 is around $50, I think, and
he's like 35
yeah,
or so.
Yeah.
Which, people are out there saying, I go to the dollar bins, I go to $10, and I get that. These are records. Again, now I'm gonna throw out a name because not just with Michael. On the opposite side, a channel that I've been watching, and I know he's commented on yours, is the Minimalist, who's in Hamburg. And I think he's from the Czech Republic or something. I forgot where he is. Or anyway, he keeps only a certain amount of records. So if he gets rid of them, he gets something else. And he just went to Paris and picked up some Sam records. And I love that.
5 records.
Right. But he can what Michael does. Like, Michael's not going around. It's not a snooty thing. He decided after so many years or whatever, he's going to keep his focus narrow. Not that he doesn't buy a lot of records, but he's going to stick with the audiophile thing for him. I could certainly see a day where I have 5,000 or 6,000 albums. I could see selling half of them or most of them and really just concentrating on a handful, although there's some great records that I love that aren't available in these formats. So anyway, Beach Boys, highly recommended.
Highly recommend. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Remember him?
Okay, I have a no Ted Nugent policy, and I hate mixing politics with. He's the biggest fucker in America, in my opinion. But anyway, so you talk about him. It's okay. Ted Nugent.
This is a gorgeous pressing.
Oh. Is that the 33 or 45?
What?
That's 45 RPM?
No, you asked me some. It's 45. But they did it in mono and stereo.
So which one are you going to send me?
Which I look now, it's a 45. I can't answer that, and I should. No, it's a 33. 33. And this is one of my best sounding records. It's what they did with this old recording is again mind-blowing. It's gorgeous. I really wait for the Aqualung on this UHQR series. It's
sitting on a park bench. Da, da, da. It's Aqualung.
But highly recommended. I think the stereo version is still available for decent prices, but the mono is
well, since you're showing something from the 60s, that's 1968 or 67, 68. I'm going to show 2 records from 65, 66, way ahead of their time, only because I don't know if this is the halfway point of this video. I got a shitload more records, so this is going to go on. We might be here like for 6 hours. Take a bathroom break, put it on hold, come back if you need to. I'm showing these because they did it right, finally, after kind of screwing up with the stereo versions of these records. I have the full box, which unfortunately is not available now. These are just 2 I picked, not necessarily my 2 favorite, but they are 2 of my favorite Beatles records. When they did the mono records, and these are with tipped-on jackets. You see that flap? Analog sourced, and which is really rare for them to go in the vault and pull out the analog records again. I don't have individuals of everything, but I would pick them up as I'd see them. The one that goes for the most crazy price now is a mono of Sgt. Pepper, which is ironic because these came out in 2013 and already they're crazy money. And who knows if they're ever going to take those tapes out again and do it? Maybe not. Most people don't care, can't hear the difference maybe. but these monos are all analog, amazing pressings. They were very reasonably priced in the low $20 range. You can see right there a little bit on the hype sticker. But I had I couldn't get through a video of these without showing the Beatles. Now, having said that, I have the Mobile Fidelity Beatle box that came out in the 80s.
Are you happy?
I don't like it. I think it's heavy-handed, and it turned out they were not the original tapes, apparently. They were copy tapes, but which happens sometimes, and that's fine. There's something about them. I mean, some people do like them. I have them, and I have a couple of the individuals. They're the ones that had the white covers of the tape reels instead of the artwork. There was a book that came along with the artwork. And I know everyone likes to jump, and just because they see something that says Mobile Fidelity, they're not all great.
I think you have to be very careful with MoFis, which came out before their fold down and their coming back with music direct. The old MoFis aren't that hot, the old ones. Be careful, they are overpriced and not as good as one might think, because the MoFis of today are gorgeous, but the old ones aren't often.
I'm not trying to jump in, but since you were talking about that, these are not audiophile records. They're not great recording records, but
best.
Jefferson Airplane was my favorite San Francisco band. Everyone knows this album, Surrealistic Pillow. You know, they recorded it at a time at RCA Studios in Hollywood where the engineers really didn't know how to record rock and roll. A lot of reverb was added. You know, it's a great record, so it doesn't really matter. You know, it's not like it's never going to be a Steely Dan record or a Dire Straits record. But this 45 RPM, hands down, is the best I've ever heard this record sound. I mean, you know, Somebody to Love, White Rabbit, but the instrumental Jorma Kaukonen version of Embryonic Journey is just gorgeous. So I'm throwing these in, and this actually is one of my favorite volunteers. So I didn't mean to jump the gun here, but since you're talking about MoFi, these are things that came out in the last 4 years, I believe, and they're stupendous.
Yes. Same, I think same goes for this one. Great.
Love that record. I have the 4 LP extended thing. It's not a Mobile Fidelity. It sounds great, but I'm sure that sounds better. Is that still available or not?
Pardon?
Is that still available?
It's on Discogs it's available, but I think it's out of print. And if it goes out of print over at MoFi, you have 2 to 3 months to get your copy. Otherwise, it gets really expensive.
My birthday's coming up in about 2 weeks, August 23rd.
Okay.
You can go to my website and find out my address. So if that shows up, anyone wants to send me that record, I'll be very grateful.
Also very interesting one.
I did not pull that. Unbelievable record. Unbelievable sounding record.
Right.
I love that record. It's gorgeous, right?
It is. It is. Absolutely. Absolutely. Sorry to say out of print, but...
Is it out of print? Yeah. Salty, Procol Harum, I did a feature last year on Procol Harum because I have every record. I love Procol Harum. They did a series of UK reissues of their entire catalog, colored vinyl, or at least the later. There were 2 things, I think up until Broken Barricades, those records are a different label, different distributor. So unfortunately, the first few albums, like I would like the one right before that, Quite Rightly So, I forget the name of that, with the green cover. I'm blanking out right now. I love that record. I wish MoFi would do a version of that because a lot of the pressings don't sound really good. I have 2 originals, and I actually have put a sticky note on one because the 2 originals, or at least early pressings I have, one sounds so different than the other one, and they're only probably a year or 2 apart.
Okay.
So
different countries, maybe from different.
No, they're
countries.
both American pressings, and it's just, you know, that's the thing. That's why if you go on Discogs, you'll see, oh, this is from Jacksonville, this is from LA. You know, you can get the same record, a Fleetwood Mac record, or any record that are, especially a big record like Rumors, that they printed millions of, 3 copies from the same year could sound different if you
Completely
really compared them. So I'm going to jump out of the MoFi box and something little. There's a label, Intervention, and they do come out of Analog Tapes. And they did this album, and they've done 2 of the Flying Burrito Brothers albums. This is the first one, the Gilded Palace of Sin, of course, with the great Graham Parsons, Chris Hillman of the Byrds, Chris Etheridge, one of the great country rock albums of all time, originally on A&M Records. It's very reasonable. It's still in print. Highly recommended. This is an audiophile record.
I think it's out of print, but will be repressed and will be in print middle of August.
Okay.
If I'm not wrong, it will be back in print because you're absolutely right. This one is a gorgeous pressing. It's a brilliant record. Yeah.
And it's well priced. It's really.
Yeah.
And I have an original A&M, or I have a. This album came out in '69. I have a 72 or 73 press, which sounds great. This sounds better, and there's no shame in that one. But this is amazing.
This one is also absolutely reasonably priced. Oh, okay. Interventions, yes.
I think people need to see that sometimes.
This is by far the best pressing of this all-time classic. It's from Speaker's Corner. It's a German label, and it's still in print. It's still available, and it sounds gorgeous. It's pressed over here in Germany at Pallas, which is, in my opinion, the best pressing plant in the world. This one, if you like this record, if you like Lou Reed.
I have an original Dynaflex of that.
Okay. So maybe I can get you into that pressing from Speaker's Corner. You will get that over at the In-Groove, by the way.
I can get that pretty easily here. I've seen it around here, at my locals, in fact.
It's a gorgeous pressing.
That's a good Speaker's Corner. I would say 80 to 90% of the stuff is spot on. There are a couple of things that don't work with them, like any label, like all these labels.
Yeah, they had some bad luck with the Le Grand Jazz. They got the wrong tapes. Nobody recognized it. But you're absolutely right. 80 to 90% of their recordings is brilliant. Brilliant. Really highly recommended because they are not so pricey. They are, I don't know what you have to pay in the United States, but here in Germany,
$25 to $30. So it's
okay.
I love that record. That's a great record. Vicious.
In my opinion, best pressing ever.
Okay.
Highly recommended. Mind blowing.
Now I'm tempted to buy videos from watching the videos that I make. I'm an easy target. I'm going to show this because it's a great record and a great this one. Rock and roll soul. I love this. Did they do the other one with the green cover? I'm trying to. This is Let's Get It On. What's the other one? The Marvin Gaye with the green cover.
Get It On. No, wait. The One Step.
I don't have the One Step, but did they do a regular edition of that? No,
I don't. Very early recordings from MoFi.
Yeah, I can't find a good pressing of that. What's Going On? I'm sorry, that's What's Going On. I can't find a good pressing of What's Going On. There's a reissue out now that looks kind of funky.
Take the One Step. It's.
Yeah, but it's like $150, right? $200 now. My birthday, August 23rd. Okay. I'm so greedy on this video. Your turn.
Thanks, Zappa.
Shake Your Booty.
Yes, it's the sound of this remaster is.
Who put that out?
This is a Zappa, the Zappa repress label, and the sound is. I couldn't believe my ears, and because of course I didn't expect such a brilliant sound. And
have you had that record before?
Yes, as a young man, and then my father needed space in his garage, and so around 800 of my records were thrown away. But this one is highly recommended. It's unbelievable good.
I have an original of those because one of my close friends, Vernon, worked for Polygram Records when that came out. I have promo copies of all these records that came out at the time. I love that because there's a funny song called Jewish Princess on that song, on that album, right?
Okay.
Jewish Princess on that?
Probably, but at least here in Germany, on every party they played Bobby Brown.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I always asked myself when they sing, and everybody sing with it in German, English, and then it came to this golden shower, and I always asked, do they really know what they are singing now?
I don't know. We don't want to explain that. I advise that viewers out here do not Google golden shower if you don't know what it means.
Don't
I'm showing a record that's just a beautiful record, and it's a stunning record from Analog Productions again. I keep going. That's one of the great labels, and there's a lot of jazz, a lot of country, a lot of classic. They do a lot of things like crooners and female vocalists and things, which I'm not including today. But this record by Cowboy Junkies, and Cowboy Junkies, I think it came out in the late 80s, 1988 originally. And what's great about them, it's lo-fi cowboy country, almost like, in fact, the song that they got known for was their cover version of Lou Reed's Sweet Jane. That is so slow. Cowboy Junkies is a perfect name for this band because it sounds like junkies who are so strung out, so low key. But I remember I saw them live in the early 90s at a small club called the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco. And it was one of the best. There's like 6, 7 musicians on stage. Brother and sister, the main vocalist is a woman who sings, and bass guitar and acoustic piano. The sound of that live performance sounded like the best audiophile record in a concert hall. You could hear every instrument. A lot of times live music can, it kind of mushes together unless you're in the right venue. That's what this record sounds like. This is a 45 RPM version of it. Blue Moon, they do the song that Elvis made famous also. Beautiful record, acoustic, electric, moody, dirgy, gorgeous record. So this I don't know if it's still in print, Audio Productions, but Cowboy Junkies, an amazing album. And I only had this on record on this recording on CD because it came out the height of the CD era in the late 80s. But this is a stunning record, like late Saturday night, early Sunday morning record.
It is on print because it's on my next order.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Did you go buy something while I was talking about it?
Remember those bands?
I do.
Also, Analog Productions.
Those are really hard to get, aren't they?
Pardon?
Aren't those hard to get?
No, I don't think so. No. They're still in print. I think the box set is hard to get, but the single, I didn't know.
I have one of the box sets, and I forget which box set I have. I don't think it's analog. Is that 33 or 45?
45.
No, I don't have that, no.
But also highly recommended if you're into the Doors. Those pressings are marvelous. I'm afraid that I always sound like a broken record when I say marvelous, gorgeous, highly recommended, but they do a great job in that companies. They are really into it. They really know what they do. And maybe we should talk also a bit about master tapes in general and what happens to those master tapes over time. Those Blue Note tapes, they are sometimes 70, 65 years old. And I'm not so sure how many remaster, reissues they have in them. So this may be the last time that we get those analog tapes on an analog medium in this quality.
It's going to be digital from now on, because that's how they preserved it, and they were able to transfer them when they were still in decent quality.
That's very important. If you think about, should I get into that stuff? Is it reasonable? I think
you're talking about analog productions and QRP pressings and all that. This is a box set, and this is their reprint, but it's still from the analog tapes. An incredible sounding record around the same time of the Doors. In fact, they paralleled their career around the same time. Very a band, one of the classic rock bands of all time, and like had more hits than any other band from the Bay Area. One of the biggest bands in the late 60s, and that's Creedence Clearwater Revival. This is the box set that came out from Analog Productions, number 76 of 2500. And it sounds amazing. Heavy jacket covers, you know, MoFi sleeves, or QRP sleeves, excuse me.
It's the same. It's the same.
You know, a lovely book.
Is this box still in print? I don't think so.
I don't know. This is the second printing they did. And my question to myself is, of that 25, is that 25 of the 2500 of the second printing, or maybe they just printed half to begin with and half again? I think that's what it was. It went back in print, and it was actually, you know, considering pretty reasonable. I don't remember how much it cost. I don't know, under $200, $175. But they had, what is it, 7 albums or something?
Yeah.
You know, all the classic records. And I have 70s pressings of all these records, which are great. They're very basic records.
But now I have to tell you when my birthday is.
When is that?
In February. I can't wait that long.
You better like pre-order if it's available. But anyway, you know, all the records, everyone knows these records. You know, the later records aren't really as good.
Yeah.
You know, Pendulum maybe was our last good one. And then, of course, there is a bonus 45, the wide stereo mix of Bad Moon Rising and Lodi. And then
great.
Revival. There we go.
Great.
So an amazing box set of great records that, you know, the typical great boomer band. You know, I'm at the tail end of the boomer generation. I know we're not quite tail end.
Very beautiful records. But what do you think about Lynyrd Skynyrd?
I like, you know, I don't have any of their records anymore. I used to, and I used to like them. I saw them live in the 70s, and I liked them. And I remember I worked in record stores when that album came out, When They're on Fire, and we had a whole box of them, or 2 boxes, and we had them on the wall, and we had to pull them down for a while because they got in that plane crash and burned up. Wow.
Also, Analog Production, they did 4 of their records. All are gorgeous, and I think this one is the best sounding of their editions. Brilliant. Again, highly recommended.
In that mode, I'm gonna do one more MoFi. One of my favorite albums, music from Big Pink. This is a 33 1/3. Sounds really good for this album. And I'm going to show this. This is not a MoFi or anything else. This just came out last year or earlier this year, I believe. And this was just put out by Capitol. It actually sounds really good. It's 45 RPM, just a regular Capitol pressing. I'd say it's somewhat audiophile. It does sound better than the original. There is, though, a lot of people, the desire of most people is to find the Robert Ludwig cut of the original. I think it's on that kind of weird greenish yellow label of Capitol. This is the best band album. It's their second album, and I think it's better than music from Big Pink. I wouldn't normally show this because this is not an audiophile label, but it's amazing that the label put out a 45 RPM edition, because it's not popular for the masses, for the audience to put out something like this. So I kind of applaud them for trying to do this and doing that. So.
The same goes, reminds me of the Tone Poet series from Blue Note. let's all hope that those big labels go into that kind of pressings, go into that kind of analog, high-end mastering, great cover thing. We only can have an advantage if they do it.
Exactly.
I hope. Let's hope.
Okay.
I have one more. Jeff Beck. Analog production. Great guitar player. Great recording.
I just have like I have a few more, but we can keep going. I'm going to show these because I show them all the time. I'll be quick, but they sound fantastic. Reissues, and especially these two, Mobile Fidelity, 33 1/3. These, in a way, are companion records because they came out like a year or two apart. One has a Tex-Mex feel. One has a little bit of a Hawaiian. I mean, they're both in a Mexican vein. What I like about this, there's a song, Diddy Why Diddy, with the great jazz piano player Earl Father Hines at the very end. One of the few songs that he wrote that was very popular, Tattler, Linda Ronstadt covered, Temp 'em Up Solid. Gorgeous records, beautiful pressings, well recorded, sound great. You know, we talked about Dylan. I'm just going to show these really quickly. My favorite Dylan album, and the latest one I picked up, Daniel Lanois production, Oh Mercy, a little more rock and roll, good record. And then, are you any more? No? Okay, I'm going to close out with three things. I'm just going to go quick.
No. I have
time. Pink Moon by Nick Drake. Came in a box, all analog. Joe Boyd, who originally produced it, reworked this. This is about.
You're happy with that recording? Is it good?
I think it's really good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think the original is great if you have an original, but this is really good. We showed this many times, one of the most beautiful records ever recorded.
Jeff Beck.
Beck and Jeff Beck. No Jeff.
Oh, no Jeff. Beck.
Yeah, this is Sea Change, moody, gorgeous record. The year this came out, I think this won a Grammy for Best Record. Maybe the one Morning Phase did, one of them. Beautiful record, gorgeous record. And then, God, I'm closing out here. Before I close out, not rock and roll, but two of the gorgeous records, and they've master and pressed their own. And Gillian Welch, analog, acoustic with Dave Rawlings, gorgeous records, amazing sounding records, country folk, gorgeous.
Yes.
They have their own label.
Unbelievable sounding records, yes.
Yeah, yes. Unbelievable sounding records. Michael's correct. And then the two I'm going to end up with, one kind of came out of nowhere. It was a Record Store Day release. Nonsuch put out in 45 RPM, and this is a record that says play loud.
Okay.
And this is a ballsy record, and it's really a duo, and it's the Black Keys, 45 RPM. This was a limited edition for Record Store Day about 8 years ago. Nonsuch Records. This is an amazing rocking. This will blow your speakers. Just the drumming, the bass, and the guitar on this. It's a rocking record. And I'm ending up. I know we talked about him before, and Michael and I, before we started this video, mentioned Neil Young. We got to talk about Neil Young. What's the one that everyone should get?
Massey Hall?
Massey Hall. In Canada, in Toronto, I believe. Is it Toronto?
Yeah.
Gorgeous sounding acoustic live record. Probably the most beautiful recording Neil Young has ever done.
I didn't put it out because I showed it in the last video. This is a live recording. You know, that recording has very worn out guitar strings. Played, but you can hear that. Yeah. You can hear how old his guitar strings are.
Neil Young has a whole series of, he did a reissue program. A lot of them already out of print, hard to get, box sets of all the first 6 or 7, 8 records. And then his records, except for lately, they've kind of, it seems like the budget's gone down for the quality of the covers and everything, but Analog Masters, beautiful records. It's called the Neil Young Archive series. And one that doesn't get a lot of play here, but I picked this because it's very rock and roll. It's very thick. It's one of the heaviest records. It's a double or triple record? Triple record I have. And it's Psychedelic Pill. And
Yes.
it's a ballsy psychedelic record with Crazy Horse. Loud, thick.
Yeah.
It's not, the light acoustic like Mazzy Hall or Harvest or After the Gold Rush. It's psychedelic. It's jam.
But honestly, I consider it audiophile because it's a very, very, very good recording. It's great. Great.
Yeah, it took me, I remember getting the CD and I almost didn't want to get this because I kept seeing it in stores like for $90 or $80. And it was, because 3 records, audiophile. And then at one point, I know it was, I hardly saw it. Then I saw this one record store I used to go to. I think it was like $80. And I mean, it wasn't even the money. It's just like, do I really need it on vinyl? And it had the loose packing, and the packing, it was the same copy, the one copy that was there for about a year. And I finally went over and they were having like a 20% off sale. And again, I would have paid that, but I said, this is the time. If I don't get it now, I won't get it. So I'm going to end with the letter Y, Neil Young, Psychedelic Pill.
Great one.
Well, Michael,
great.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Ja.
By your comment.
Das nächste Video machen wir auf Deutsch. I said the next video we do in German.
Kaffee mit Schlag.
Okay, we stick to English.
Come, give mir dein Ham, sie liebt dich. It's the Beatles. She loves you, and I want to hold your hand.
Okay.
Sie liebt dich, yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure. I love talking about this kind of music and these kind of releases. Again, they're not for everybody, and I don't mean that as a snooty way. A lot of people don't want to pay this much for a record or feel, you want to enjoy the music, and it always comes down to the music first. But there's an option like anything else. And it's glad that vinyl is being printed like this still in this day and age, after all the years of, 25 years of digital being the primary source of physical music. So it's great to have this again. So thank you. Mazzy loves you.
Thank you for having me again.
And
thank you very much.
Later. Take care, VC.
Okay.